So hello everyone. So my name is Espion and I run a small YouTube channel which you're hopefully watching this video on. And today we're really lucky to have Carl behind Straton and Signum watches. So hello Carl, thanks for joining us.
Hello everyone. Thanks Espion for having me.
Very exciting. So I have
Cool.
some questions for you today, obviously, and we'll get to your watches shortly. But could you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your background first?
Sure. I don't know how far back I should go, but yeah, maybe in a nutshell, I'm originally from Cape Town, South Africa. Moved to Switzerland, Zurich, in 2010 for family reasons, and yeah, I've been here ever since.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know how far you'd like me to go into. Is it relating to watches or just in
Yeah, I
general,
suppose it's just,
or
yeah, no, that's enough actually. It's interesting to know people's backgrounds and things because we often find,
yeah,
or like some of the other people I've spoken to so far, like Mike from Drock and he's South African, lives in New Zealand. And then you got Travis,
yes,
out of Singapore, who's an airline pilot and stuff. It's just interesting that people have all kinds of various backgrounds, right? Yeah.
backgrounds, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I guess, what I found interesting is, just knowing a little bit of what got you into watches. So, what was your first watch, and what are some of your favorite brands at the moment?
I don't have my first watch right here, right now with me. It's upstairs, but it was a Loris,
Oh, yes,
gifted to me by my grandparents, my oma and opa. It's a three-hand. It's a quartz, but I've still got it. It's really small. I think it's like a 36 millimeter or something like that. So that was probably back in 1997,
right.
around there. Yeah, yeah.
So it's nice you still
And
have it.
yeah,
It's nice you
sorry.
still have it because obviously some your
Yeah,
memory.
actually, I went back to South Africa 2 months ago, and my parents were actually packing up to immigrate to leave South Africa, and all my watches, my old original watches, were in the safe. So my mom gave them to me, and yeah, then I brought it with me when I left.
Lovely.
So yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
And what would you say are some of your favorite brands at the moment?
Um, Look, my styling is always, sort of. So I love chronographs. That's where my true passion lies. But really, for anything different. So um, I wouldn't say that I'm focusing on any particular brand at the moment. Um, I just enjoy, if I see something I like. It's not that I buy it, but I enjoy it. But with owning a brand, or with Straton and Signum, I sort of mix it up in terms of when I wear watches from other brands. So it's not like I have a schedule, but it's normally maybe on the weekends, one day or so, that I wear watches from other
Yeah.
brands. Otherwise, I'm wearing my own brands. So I have a couple. I have a collection of 70s, chronographs from various brands. One can call them microbrands back in the
Yeah.
day, and sort of really quirky ones. And got some Seikos, and yeah, a couple other
Yeah.
watches, Hoya, a Breitling, yeah,
Yeah. So,
a few
yeah,
that I
big
try and I
variety.
try and look. But
Um,
yeah,
So, could you tell us a little bit about the day when you decided to start your own watch brand? So, am I right in saying Stratum is first?
Stratton was
Yeah.
first, but I sort of had a background in a little bit of background in the watch industry before that, so the watch business in terms of sales. So I moved to, as I said, into Switzerland in 2010, and it was a complete new start for me in a new country where I didn't speak the
Mm.
language, and I had to learn the language and sort of, you know, build up everything, build up my whole life again. I was 24 at the time, and I always knew, or I was always had an entrepreneurial side to me. So I always knew that I was going to start a business in some shape or form. But obviously, for stability and family reasons, I have to have a full-time job at the same
Yeah.
time. So I was looking at options for, starting a business, and one of the common things that always came up is do something you love or have an interest in. And I always loved watches, and I started a business while I was in Switzerland, but in South Africa, where there was an online website like an eBay or something like that. The wider audience will recognize, but the South African version of
Right.
that, which Amazon is not there. Sorry, not Amazon, eBay. So I purchased sort of brands that were not known to the South African market, and I started putting them online and selling them. And basically, what I do is I started off with 10 watches. I bought them, I sent them to my parents, and my mom was sort of my right hand for, shipping and
Yeah.
logistics. So basically, I would be responsible for the marketing, putting up the adverts, etc. And then once the watch was sold, my mom would post it off, and it took off pretty quickly. I mean, I was doing about 250 watches a
Yeah.
month
Wow.
in my third
Right.
month.
Did your mom at that
And
point
it,
go, you know what? Maybe it's time to buy
yeah,
someone.
yeah, it was actually like now, like with Stratton, a pretty well-oiled machine, but it went really well for like 2.5
Yep.
years. I started it in 2012, and in 2014 the rand, the South African value to the dollar, dropped like 50%
Right.
over that time. So my profit margins got smaller and smaller and smaller over
Yeah.
time. And I was through that 2.5 years, I always thought, damn, I'd really like to start my own brand, but having a 500 piece minimum order quantity was always a quite a massive capital outlay, risk versus reward. Am I going to take that risk and then, I can't sell them, or, and then I was looking for ways of how can I start this? And I came up with the concept of Straton. I love cars, classic cars, racing. I'm a hobby racing driver at the same time. I not back
No.
then, but I had my classic car back then, which was a 1977 Alfetta GT, which I still have
Yeah.
today.
Lovely.
And I combined the two. And the first watch, the Vintage Driver, was inspiration from the tachometer of my Alpha, and the dial was inspired by that. So I fused that. I created Straton. I ordered the samples, and actually the first samples were, because I was on such a tight budget. Um, my budget was just over $2,000. So my actual samples did not have movements
Right.
in them. The hands were literally glued to the 10-10 position.
Yeah.
And that is how I used the photo shoot. The original samples were without movements. It actually saved me time, because all my samples after that were always with movements, and I always set the time to 10-10 for
Yeah.
balance. It's the best
Yeah.
looking, and I always have to set them.
Yeah. It's inconvenient.
So I think back to when my first samples were the hands were glued. I
Yeah.
never had to set them,
Yeah.
so I could just place them and
Yeah. It's
uh,
funny because
and take a
I
photo.
obviously film watches all the time, and it's really inconvenient because you set them at 10:10 and they keep going. It's like, God, I have to keep adjusting
Exactly,
them.
exactly. Every few minutes you need to set them
Yeah.
back. So yeah, that was sort of, you know, right at that stage when I'd ordered the samples, I was still sort of deciding how am I going to launch, because at that time, um, Kickstarter wasn't open for project creators in
Right.
Switzerland, based in
Yeah.
Switzerland. You could back a project from Switzerland, but you couldn't create a
Okay.
project. So the only really option at that stage was Indiegogo,
Oh yeah.
but it literally within the following months that I was getting ready for the launch, Switzerland opened up as a project
Oh,
creator for
okay.
Kickstarter. So it was literally timing was, this was in 2015, and I launched. I think it was on the 1st of July, or no, yeah, 1st of July. I
Okay.
think around there, 2015, and this was sort of just before the big rush of
Yeah.
brands. I think that the brands started really coming in 16, 17, 18, and then even 19, and so on. It just kept on going, more and more projects. So um, I I really was not expecting when I launched. I still remember I was in Munich visiting my now wife. In uh, she lived in Munich at the time, and I was just expecting 15,000 Swiss francs over 30 days. That was my
Yeah.
goal, and I would have been ecstatic even after the 30 days if I had reached 15,001.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, um, I would have been over the moon. And I hit that target within the first hour,
Yeah. Wow.
and I was just like, I still remember thinking back to how I was feeling, and it was an incredible, you know, I was just overwhelmed and just really grateful and happy for all the support. And then I put myself back into the situation while that campaign was running. There was no real, you know, textbook of how to do this.
No.
Um, and it's not like I think today there's so many projects, especially in the watch space, that one can sort of take examples from of how to do things and that. And I was just really winging it, but um, I was literally contacting as many blogs in terms of watches and cars, you know, um, as possible every night, sort of emailing them saying, here's my story, this guy who, loves cars and watches, and here's my first watch, and it hit the target within the first hour, and now I've got 30 days to try and get as much support as
Yeah.
possible. Is there any way that people can support and help me? And I still remember a website called
Oh
Petrolicious,
yes, I know Petrolicious. Yeah.
which
Great site.
they do some cool
They do.
videos with
They're
owners of
awesome
the
videos.
classic
Yeah.
cars. And I actually contacted them, and they wrote me back and said, look, it's a little bit of a tight schedule. That was literally in the first week of my campaign, and they said, it's probably not going to be possible. So I left it, and then I picked it up about, I think, in my third week. Again, I said, look, I've already reached just over 100K in funding. Is there any possible way you guys can squeeze me in, if even if it's just an article, or something like that? And that's what they did. They accepted, and this was without any cost, without paying for
Yeah.
anything. No paid advertise. I literally, my complete budget, including advertising samples, was
Yeah.
$2,000. And I had a little bit of Facebook
Yeah.
advertising. And their article went live 48 hours before the end of my first campaign, and it did 50K
Wow.
turnover in that last 48
Yeah.
hours.
Amazing.
And I was just like, it was normally today's, campaigns, they go like
Yeah.
that, and then maybe they go
Yeah.
like that, and then like that at the end. Whereas mine went that, and then it sort of, and then it did
Yeah.
that at the end, and it was like, wow. And I was just really, really grateful. So that was the start of
Yeah.
Straton,
Fantastic.
and yeah, just really, I was humbled and grateful for all the support, and then I was able to, with that support, my first watch was sort of very, in terms of styling, very plain. It still fitted, the Stratton aesthetic, but it was a decision of mine as well. Then is the only time I sort of rebranded. I didn't want the whole word. That was my original logo, the complete Stratton in
Yeah.
writing, whereas I dropped the writing and just kept the
Yeah, yeah,
S. And the reasoning for me for doing that is I wanted the styling of the brand to speak for itself. So my aim was I wanted for people to see a Straton watch and know it's a Straton watch based on its styling
yeah,
only. And that already started to happen within like the third
yeah.
watch. People were, they didn't need to see the writing Straton to see it's a Straton
No,
watch. And I had one time, I remember a it does make some sense in terms of, okay, I'm not a Coca-Cola or something like that, but I had some marketing expert tell me that I wouldn't last 2 years because my logo on its own is not
right,
recognizable.
okay.
And I I personally I knew my goal, and okay, I it's not my goal to be the most well-known watch brand,
Mm,
not. I just I create watches I like. And I always use this saying, it's just a bonus if other people like them
yeah,
as
yeah,
well. So I know that there are strong opinions and people are not going to like
yeah,
everything. So if a person doesn't like the styling of my watch and they have something bad to say about it, I
yeah,
respect
that's
that, no
fine. Yeah.
problem. Not everybody's going to like, but
Uh,
yeah, that's maybe just a little bit of
yeah, yeah,
background
that's really interesting. Thank you. And I mean,
in Stratton.
I'm scared, and it's a bit dangerous to ask this because I think we are both massive fans of cars. We've already sort of established that.
Yeah.
My first car was an Alfa Romeo as well, and it's still very
Oh,
dear to
cool.
my heart. And today I'm
Okay.
a grown man with adult children, and I drive a Toyota 86, a manual. So, like,
Oh,
boy
nice.
racer, like ridiculous. But I just can't let go of that passion, you know? So,
Yeah.
so one thing is, I mean, you've obviously embraced vintage designs, and you are
Yeah.
clearly a fan of beautiful cars. So where did that passion come from? Like the car angle, which is so
Yeah.
obvious if you're someone like me, you look at it and go, "Bang, I love that immediately." Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so is that something
The
you grew up with as well, or yeah,
Exactly. My dad, I come from a very normal, humble background. My dad was a racing and rally driver, but not as a profession, but as a hobby. But again, we come from very humble backgrounds, and the passion was created from that. I remember as a kid going to the racetrack. My dad had some alphas that one alpha that he raced, and he collected alphas and lancias
oh,
over
nice,
the
yeah,
years. I remember when he bought the Lancia Delta
yeah,
Integrale,
wow,
89
yeah,
model, 8 valve second hand. He'd been saving up for it, and I remember my mom would drive it as well.
okay,
So it was a left-hand drive car in South
oh yeah,
Africa,
yeah,
which is normally right-hand
yeah.
drive. So my mom would pick me up from school sometimes, and people
Awesome.
didn't know what it is, right? It maybe looked like a Golf
Yeah,
2,
yeah, yeah, that's right.
in terms of
Yeah.
styling, and one time she did a burnout in front of school after she picked
Your
me
mom
up.
is
It was, mom's a bit of a rebel.
yeah,
But yeah, that's where the passion came from. I love all
yeah,
cars, but I think Alpha and Lancia do, just because of growing up
yeah.
with that. It was dear to my
Yeah, and I
heart.
think
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the those Italian brands, right? Like the engines are just fantastic. Like it's all about the revving, it's about the feel and everything, but everything else just falls
yeah,
apart. You know, it is true what they say about these cars, but you can't help but just passionately love them, and it's annoying because it's just such a
yeah,
money pit. Um,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway, we better steer off that quickly because it will go on forever. Um, so in terms of, your concept designs and manufacturing, so where did you start with? I mean, you sort of touched on it a little bit, but what did you do? Like, where did you go? Or just to sort of find a supplier, like who's going to make these watches for you? Because, even today I
Yeah,
have a bit of knowledge, but I would still have very little idea of how to actually get cracking on it.
sure. So while I had that business in South Africa with buying and selling unknown brands, a factory in China, in Shenzhen, actually contacted me
Right.
and said, look, I have these designs, um, we can make watches for you if you want. So I kept their contact details, and when it came down to me, designing the watch, the vintage driver, and starting that, that's the first person I
Yeah.
went to,
Okay.
and it is still my manufacturer
Great.
today. Um, So there's only one watch that registers as Swiss made, and that's my Yacht Racer
Yep.
automatic. Um, and for that, I have a assembler and factory here in Le Château in
Right.
Switzerland for that to be qualified as Swiss
Yep.
made, but all the other pieces are made by my manufacturer in
Yep.
Shenzhen. And I think it's rare for I just built a really good relationship with the owner of the factory. He's a young guy. Also, he's 3 years older than
Okay.
me. I still remember when I went over to
I was going to
Shenzhen
ask if you've
to
been
do
there.
the
Yeah. Great.
packing. Yeah, yeah. Because this is how I worked. I did the packing and shipping of all the watches for any customer outside of Switzerland from
Yep.
there. And so I would literally fly over there for a week and work 20-hour days, QCing and packing and shipping watches on my own. So
Mm.
I would go there, and they had a air-conned room for me set up, and I would go in there and pack the
Yep.
watches. And when he first picked me up from the airport, the owner of the business, he had a Ford Focus
Oh,
four
yeah.
door,
Yep.
and he was also a car
Yep.
guy. And he said to me he cannot wait to get a nicer
Yeah.
car and that. And I think it was in 2018, then 3 years later when I arrived, I would go once or twice a year when I would launch new collections and then pack them. He said, "I've got a surprise. I'm gonna pick you up at the airport." And he bought seven no a 525 Ally
Okay. Yeah.
BMW,
Nice.
brand new
Yeah.
cash. So
Lovely.
in China they have the longer versions, the
Yep.
Ally, which is
Yep.
longer, so it has a bit more headroom. And he bought it
Right.
cash, and he was like really happy, and I was also really happy for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
We had sort of grown
Yeah.
together, and he's like family to me. And I sometimes bring new clients
Yep.
in. I don't get anything from that. I just said, I look after you, you look
Yeah.
after me.
Yeah.
So, if I've helped quite a lot of, new micro brands as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
pre-launch. Some guys have reached out to me, and um, I've helped them, and also free of
Yeah.
charge.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Some guys have said I should charge a
Yeah.
consulting fee for it, because
Yeah.
I it was just me, right? Because I also had prior to the launch, not help with
No.
launching, but with help with sort of technical specs and sort of watch jargon and that. I had one person that I had help from, and I just think back, if I didn't have that, maybe it would have been a little bit more
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah, I've always been there and help other
yeah.
brands if they need it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, you get a nice feeling from doing those things, as they say, like, it's more rewarding to give someone something than to receive something, so,
yeah,
and having,
and I believe in things coming back,
yeah,
right? Um, yeah,
and having a nice relationship, with the same manufacturer of all these years. I mean, that's so nice to hear. Like, really nice.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
unique because normally guys change and
Yes.
change and change, and I put it down to this way. I always tell everybody, the saying, there's going to be problems with every
Yeah.
manufacturer that you
Yeah.
have, whether Swiss, whether Chinese,
Yeah.
wherever. The issue is how willing, when things go wrong, is the manufacturer willing to set those wrongs
Yeah.
right at their own
Yeah.
cost. and especially with Chinese manufacturers, it's rare. If there are problems, they're just gonna, sort of, a lot of them will wipe their hands and say, it's
Yeah.
done, there's your
Yeah.
watches,
Yeah.
finished. And with mine,
Right.
never. If there's an issue, he'll
Yeah.
fix it
Fantastic.
at his
Yeah.
cost, because if it's his fault,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. If it's my fault, then of course I'm responsible for, you know, making
Yeah.
changes or paying for those,
Yeah.
etc. But I just think you're going to have issues with every. It's how willing the manufacturer is to make those issues
Yeah,
right.
that's great
And
advice,
yeah,
to have us watching this and might be looking at doing something similar. That's great advice, I think. So in terms of movements, so I mean we
yeah,
often, those of us that love and unfortunately spend all of our money on microbrands, we're fully aware of the fact that, you there's all kinds of movements, right? And sometimes you hear that some are harder to source than others. And obviously
yep,
pricier and things like that. So what's your approach to this? Do you feel like your customers, I mean, you touched on the fact that you do have a Swiss-made watch. Is that something that comes up
yeah.
often? Like people, rather buy one over the other based on movements?
Mm, I would say my customer. I mean, I sometimes get the question of where my watch is made,
Mm,
and I will never shy away from made in
yeah,
China, because I have built my success off of
yeah,
that. And one can say, sure, I've been successful in this
yeah,
industry. And that's based off of the quality that I receive from my
yeah,
manufacturer, my Chinese
yeah,
manufacturer. So that is something that I think people should, or I'm proud of
yeah,
that fact, because you have this misconception, made in China is cheap, but there are massive differences in the quality, and you
yeah,
see it. You got your cheap $5 watches, and you've got your expensive, you know, um,
yeah,
pieces, and I'm proud of that fact. So I do get the question from customers sometimes, where are my watches made? And I said, look, majority of my watches are made in China, and I'm now in the position, because I have an established name in the business, etc. I said I have based that off made in China,
yeah,
so that should speak for
yeah,
itself. I produce a quality
yeah,
product. I know I do. Of course, I'm not immune to issues. Issues happen. Um, you know, but it's. I also use the again the analogy of, like I said, with manufacturing. But if it's the a brand and a customer sees a watch with an issue, the difference I always say is how is that issue
yeah,
rectified? How is that issue made right?
yeah,
And if it's made right in a timely manner, in an appropriate way, with minimal cost or time to the
yeah,
customer, that's
yeah.
how it should
It's
work.
like all customer service, I
And
think. I mean, things go wrong all the time, but
yeah,
it's how you fix it that's what matters. But
it's how that makes the
yeah,
difference.
yeah.
Exactly. It's how you fix it that makes the
So
difference.
with movements
And
though, that do you
with movements,
so
sorry, yeah, let's get back to that.
sorry.
Movements. I've used a very wide variety of
Yeah, you
movements,
have, yeah,
from Swiss made to Japanese
yeah,
to
yeah.
Chinese, in
So
terms of,
if you make a quartz
ST19.
movement, is that right? Or yeah,
Yeah, a lot of my sort of staple sellers are Mega Quartz
yeah,
powered, so VK63, 67, 64. And I always use a variety of movements. Um, I've used Valjoux 7750, Valjoux 7753 on my GMT, or I've used a Swiss Tech. Um, I've used multiple movements.
yeah.
So I do not find that personally that I have to have a particular movement to, get a certain
No,
feedback.
okay.
Um, I, I'm more concerned with my watch. Styling is more important to
Yeah,
me. Of course, it's good to have maybe a mechanical movement, or that, that's why I say, let's take my Speziale model, for example. It's probably the best seller to date. I've reproduced it 7 times over, and it's now gone into its eighth production, producing another 1,000 pieces, 500 in mecha quartz and 500 in
Yeah.
automatic, coming out in new colors in about a month and a
Okay.
half. And that has the VK67 mecha quartz, no date, no day date, whereas the Valju 7750 day date, you know, and there are two different types of people who will buy
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, some customers who aren't really interested in the movement, or they are, but just don't want, the servicing
No.
of an automatic
Yeah.
chronograph, or the hassle. I don't see it as a hassle, but still the cost related to owning a
Yeah.
mechanical
Yeah.
chronograph. They just buy the Mecha Quartz because they love the
Yeah.
styling, and the other guys who really want that mechanical feel, and also maybe they like the day date look,
Yeah. Yeah.
buy the
Yeah.
automatic. Um, so yeah, in terms of movements, and also deciding, of course, when it's it's the second thing that I look at, or first thing. Well, yeah, one can say it's maybe the first thing I look at in terms of when designing or deciding on a watch, what movement am I going to
Yeah.
use? Because that, of course, decides thickness, that decides date or no
Yeah.
date, or
Yeah. Of course.
chronograph or not, or whatever functions. So, and then one sort of really needs to look at, am I able to access that
Yeah.
movement? Do I have the ability to get
Yeah.
it?
And is that hard,
I'm
would you say, or
fortunate.
yeah.
Yeah, I think for other people it can be even harder, but I'm lucky in a sense that I have a good network here in Switzerland where I'm able to access, especially Swiss movements.
Yeah.
So I have good access to. That's why I can still constantly
Yeah.
launch with 7750s, or
So
I can get 7753s,
does it
or
help to live in
yeah.
Switzerland and be able to go and speak to people, would you say? Or
I wouldn't say it's an absolute, it's made it
yeah.
easier because, I can meet people in person, and, build rapport
Yeah.
and relationship, and, that's what I've got with a few people, and, they look after me, and I look after them,
Yeah.
bring them clients, and they, they look after
Yeah.
me. So,
Yeah.
I'm really happy with that, but certainly I do wish that I had more access to a larger variety, especially um, in terms of thickness for mechanical
Yeah.
chronographs. One thinks of a mechanical chronograph, it's usually quite
Yeah.
thick, 15 millimeters or
Yeah.
more. And that's with being automatic. So, hand wound, Celita has brought in, I think it's their SW 550 or 500, something like, which is a hand
Yeah.
wound, modern hand wound chronograph
Yeah.
movement. I haven't used them yet, but I will see. There's always, again, with minimum order
Yeah.
quantities and cost, etc. Yeah, it's a difficult thing to navigate in this
Yeah.
industry, is having the cash flow to be able to purchase
Yeah.
movements, and for that you need to have the customers, you need to have
Yeah.
the commitment of
Yeah.
orders, and you need to be confident enough that you're going to make
Yeah.
those to be able to even start producing
Yeah.
watches. So I've certainly moved along. I don't use Kickstarter
No.
anymore. I haven't used Kickstarter for Straton since
Yeah.
2019. I only launched via my
Yeah.
website, and of course Signum, which I launched in 2020, was never on Kickstarter. It was only via the
Yeah.
website. So yeah,
Yeah. Awesome.
yeah,
So you touched on this a little bit already, but I'm sort of interested really on how your average day look at the moment, because you mentioned
oops,
early
sorry,
on, like,
okay,
with the early watches, there's a lot of work, and going over to China, pack your own watches and all this sort of stuff. So a lot of hands-on and doing it basically everything yourself. But so what's it like today for you? So I mean, I assume you still look after your own websites and you do all your own books, and do you send out your orders yourself still, or what does it look like today for you for
yeah.
both brands?
Today, maybe I should just say in the beginning, still I still have a full-time
Yep.
job besides running both
Right.
brands. So I also have a wife and 3 kids. and
So do you sleep
so
ever or?
my evenings in bed are usually dedicated to the watch
Yeah, okay.
business. So my the daytime is usually well, it is for my daytime job, and then I dedicate sort of the time and then in the evenings to which doesn't need a lot, but I'm still I'm active in social
Yeah, you
media.
are. Yeah,
I still do all my own
yeah.
marketing, except it's the first this week or this last week actually, the first time in the business's history that I'm taking the leap of outsourcing a portion of my marketing to an agency.
Okay. Mm,
It's and its focus is purely on email
right.
marketing, so not Facebook ads or anything like that. It's purely on email marketing, and it was a daunting decision to do it because I've always been in control of
Yeah.
everything. And I think it's that journey of an entrepreneur is if letting go of certain tasks when you know that you've reached your limit of what you can do,
Yeah.
or your knowledge or your ability to do a certain task. Because my business, it's plateaued in the last two
Right.
years. It's healthy business, doing
Yeah.
well. It's just it's not growing
Yeah.
anymore. So I've reached that limit in terms of what I can do.
Yeah.
So I've said, I said to myself, Carl, maybe you should
Yeah.
experiment a little bit of letting go of certain tasks and maybe giving it to somebody who can do it better than
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
And
Delegate.
so that is literally what I'm starting now this week
Okay.
with.
So I'll
Um,
keep an eye
I'm
out in my
busy
inbox
with
then,
the
Carl.
agency to to set that
Yeah.
up. So I manage things pretty well. It's in terms of fulfillment. Um, I have trained my manufacturer. They do my fulfillment for me for anyone outside of Switzerland. They do the fulfillment
Yeah.
for, or the non-Swiss made pieces are done out there, and I do the
Yeah.
rest.
Okay.
So luckily, I don't. The majority of shipping is done by them. We monitor that, and it runs really
Yeah.
well.
Cool.
It runs
Okay.
well.
Well, that's good to
So
hear.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah. So I guess on that too, you mentioned early on, I mean, the profit margins are very slim, and sometimes you look at microbrands. I mean, the great thing about microbrands for those of us that buy them is that they're very affordable. Like you get a lot for your money, you get beautiful watches at a very affordable price point. But sometimes you worry a little bit that, are you actually, that the people behind the brands, are you actually making money? And I mean, you mentioned the fact that
Yeah.
you have a family, you have a day job, and you have two watch brands. So,
Yeah.
do you think at some point you will be able to live off the two brands?
If I didn't live in Switzerland, yes.
Right. Yeah.
Switzerland's incredibly
Yeah.
expensive. It's a beautiful
It is.
place, but it's incredibly
It is.
expensive. And, if I had to pack my bags now and move to South Africa, for
Yeah.
example, I would be able to live from the watch
Yeah.
brand income, without an
Yeah.
issue. Um, just because I've sort of, reached in terms of volume, consistently selling every day pieces, and it's reached that point now where yeah, but who knows?
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the setup right
Yeah.
now, and as I said, I'm starting to experiment with letting go of certain
Yeah.
tasks. Maybe that has an influence on how the business
Yeah.
does. Hopefully, positively. That because I want to continue designing
Yeah.
watches. That's my passion. That's what I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's just a bonus if other people do like my
Yeah.
designs.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Without this is not about me, but I'm kind of the same with my channel. Like I review watches that I like, and if someone watches it, great. But ultimately, I do
yeah,
it because I enjoy it. So,
yeah.
yeah. So you are very active on social media, as you mentioned before, and I mean, obviously, Jody at Just One More Watch did a shout out on the League of Microbrands Facebook group a little while ago, and there was a massive influx of people. And you are one of the most active microbrand owners, I reckon, on there, and you're constantly posting a lot of interesting, like current and future designs. And so, how important is that to your business? Would you say, like that sort of activity? Like, do you do it more because it's fun, or do you get a lot of genuinely useful feedback?
I do it because I love it and I love engaging the
Yeah,
community. Um, I always try, I post every day.
yeah,
So, and I've done that, religiously for seven
yeah,
years,
yeah,
basically. And I like to engage with the community, get feedback, and also I try not to do it in, your typical marketing way. So I very, very, very rarely post, links in, the posts that I make or even the brand name.
yeah,
And maybe I say if I do that, I sometimes, I do it on purpose because I believe that engaging with the community, but also it's a form of marketing.
yeah,
So I want people to interact with the post as well. So, if I don't have the brand name in there and a person doesn't know, they'll write in the comment and ask.
yeah,
And I personally, I believe that that interaction, that person will
yeah,
remember that
sure,
interaction rather than just reading the post, seeing the brand name, and they'll probably forget about
yeah,
it. But that little interaction of asking for it, that person will most likely remember. But yeah, I like to keep active in the groups. I enjoy the groups, and enjoy
yeah.
interacting with
Yeah, and
people,
I think
Um,
from our perspective as well, like it's awesome to be able to talk directly to the brand owners of all these brands that we know and love, right? So it's fantastic to
yeah,
see you and many others are so active in there.
yeah.
Yeah, so
No, I think it's really it's a plus point for our for the industry,
yeah,
for the microbrand industry as a whole. Especially the owners who do engage that
yeah.
much. I think it's
Yeah,
good. I think it's
definitely.
good.
So, I mean, you did mention already on, so we might not have to go into too much details on Kickstarter, but it is still interesting because obviously Kickstarter was a big part of many brands and many offerings out there,
Yeah,
how they got started, but it's probably quite different today to what it was once.
it
Yeah,
is.
so
It is.
I mean, you obviously stopped launching watches because your brand name is probably strong enough, I'd imagine, and you hopefully have a decent database that you can market to. But would you go back, would you
Yeah.
say, and do another one on Kickstarter?
I, I can't close the
No.
book. I think I'm incredibly grateful for Kickstarter, because without it, I wouldn't have had the success maybe, or maybe it would have taken
Yeah.
longer. Um, I was actually always a very big advocate of Kickstarter, and in a way, I still am. It's just unfortunate, the campaigns or some, that where people have been burnt,
Yeah.
and it's given a bad
Yeah.
name. As we had the unfortunate the Hamtum
Yeah.
one,
That's a big one. Yeah.
which was an established sort of brand with a good history,
Yeah.
and
And
it went sour and burnt a lot of
yeah,
people.
and also they were really
Um,
beautiful designs, and people really wanted to get them. So it was
yeah,
really sad.
yeah. So I think I still think it's a great platform, and I still think there will be successful brands still launched on there. It's just not easy.
No.
There needs to be the right amount of design, marketing effort. It's not easy to launch a brand today. Even back then, for me, even though I didn't have any idea, I was just winging it. Um, but I put a lot of effort into
Mm.
it. I was just lucky enough that it
Yeah.
worked. Um, it's just not easy today
No. No.
to do
No.
it.
Yeah.
And also, I'm still, if I can put it this way, Kickstarter is a platform for a new brand versus pre-ordering on a brand's own website. People need to hear this and understand this point of view because it makes sense. Kickstarter is still the better way for the customer to do it. Why? Because you have the comments section, which is an open section for backers to converse with each other. Comments can't be deleted, only if there's profanity used, but a brand owner or a campaign owner can't delete comments in that section. So that is a way for the backers or the customers to hold the brand accountable to
Yeah.
mistakes or anything that's gone wrong. If that same brand launches on their own website, you don't have that.
No.
You don't know who the other customers are. You don't know who the other backers are. The only way you can voice bad opinions of maybe something that's gone wrong or in the Facebook groups or on watch
Yeah.
forums, but then you've got to hope that other backers who have also backed that same project on their website has seen your
Yeah.
post and some way hold that brand
Yeah.
accountable. But in terms of payment wise, if you paid with your credit card on Kickstarter, you still have the same ability to get your purchase refunded. You don't need to use Kickstarter to get, you can. If the brand's not engaging and not wanting to give you a refund, if you within that, I think it's 180
Yeah.
days credit card, there's a window where you can contact directly your credit card provider and say, I haven't received what I've purchased. It's a scam. Give me my money
Yeah.
back,
Yeah.
please. If it's within that 180 days, your credit card provider should refund you that
Yeah.
money. And you can do that on Kickstarter if it's within
Yeah.
that period versus, you know, doing it via the brand's website directly. You still have that, but you don't have that ability to connect with other
No.
people, other
No.
customers, etc.
It is
So
an excellent point.
that is,
Yeah.
yeah, that is why I've always been a good advocate of Kickstarter for launching a
Yeah.
product because you're able to hold the brand accountable, and we've seen mass lawsuits or
Mm.
because people have
Yeah.
connected and gone forward and gone after a
Yeah.
brand
No.
or made police reports of
Yeah.
theft
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah, and
that.
I've often found it useful when brands sometimes launch the second or third product, you can go back to their old campaigns and see what happened.
Yeah,
So that's something I always do before backing anything, and it's been really useful.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So that's why I think, versus launching, people need to consider that
Yeah,
and it's still relevant
yeah,
today. It
yeah,
is because I see comments on in Facebook and in Facebook groups. Oh, I don't want Kickstart, but you have exactly the same risk and more if you're ordering from a brand's
yeah,
website.
yeah,
They could string you
yeah,
along past those 180-day window and then disappear with your
yeah,
money.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
possible, and then you can't converse with anybody
No,
else
no.
to maybe there's some other points I'm
That
missing,
is
but
yeah,
that's
well, I think that's a great point. So, um,
that's mine. Yeah.
yeah, so my final question for you is just hopefully to get a bit of a scoop here, Carl. So what's coming
Yeah.
next?
I've been posting sort of, it's been a while coming, the Sportiva and
Yep,
Volante from
yep,
Straton. That's finally launching on the 30th of
cool.
June. I first showed this design, it was last year summer,
Yep,
European summer, so I think it was around August, July that I showed this design, and it just took, we had COVID impact of on the samples, and I made some changes, and even 6 weeks ago I made another
right,
change. So I originally decided on one case size. So the Sportiva and Volante are typical Straton styling, 70s
yep,
retro. The Sportiva is a chrono, powered by a VK 64 Mecha Quartz, and the Volante is a three-hand automatic version powered by a Celita SW200
right, yep,
automatic. And both are the same thickness, so they're really thin, 11.25
awesome.
millimeters, which Normally, Straton watches aren't so
No.
thin. They're normally known for being a little bit
Yeah.
thicker. So I originally decided on one size, which was
Yeah.
41.5 by 48 millimeters, lug to lug. It has no lugs, but
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
integrated. Um, I've got a example of two right here. I got the samples in front of me, so um,
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah.
that's the Sportiva
Yeah.
Chrono right
Yeah.
there, and that's the Volante
Yeah.
automatic.
Awesome.
Comes in seven
Yeah.
colors, really funky colors, and also maybe some that are more
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
toned
Yeah.
down
Gorgeous.
brown cream version.
Yeah.
And so I originally made in a 41.5 millimeter, and when I got it, I've got a 7.1 inch wrist,
Okay.
and I was I think it's an okay
Yeah.
size for that. It may be just slightly on the larger side, but I'm always known for launching multiple
Yeah.
sizes. So
Yeah. That looks great.
that's it there on my
Yeah.
wrist. So it fits my
Yeah.
wrist, but it is a larger
Yeah.
watch. And I had the comments of, oh, I'd really like a smaller
Yeah.
size. And 6 weeks ago, I talked with my manufacturer and said, can we make a 38 millimeter?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
we said let's do it.
Cool.
So we're doing it in both sizes, 38 millimeters in both
Yeah.
watches, the Volante and the Sportiva. They will launch on the 30th of June, so it'll be a pre-order, but it'll be a shorter
Okay.
pre-order. So delivery will be in about 6 weeks
Okay.
later after that. So we're not talking 3 to 6 months waiting. It's only a month and a
Yeah.
half, around a month and a half to get the watches done and shipped.
Cool.
That's with Straton. I'm also launching the new Speziale colors, sort of a turquoise one, which is quite a popular color in the industry at the
Yeah.
moment. An orange one. Yeah, some cool new
Yeah.
colors in the Speziale. They, as I said, my best seller to date. That's really loved
Yeah.
piece. And Signum, I just launched the full lume titanium
Yep. So
kudos.
those. Yeah. And awesome.
Really cool. The orange full lume dial.
Yeah.
I haven't seen an orange full
Oh,
lume dial
no,
before.
ever. Yeah.
Even though, yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen one,
Is the loom
but
really
there is
strong on
one.
that? Like, because the orange.
It, it's look, the C5 and C3 is
Yeah.
stronger, but you can definitely notice
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
If you have a UV torch and you
Yeah.
do shine it on and then let go, and it is really
Yeah.
bright. But I've tested in normal lighting conditions. If you wear the watch in the day, I can still read the time if it's next to my bed
Okay.
at 4 o'clock in the
Okay.
morning.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's all you can ask.
It's not bright.
Yeah.
It's not bright,
Uh,
but if you look in a dark room, you can read the time.
yeah.
And yeah, the loom lovers. It's a special group
Yeah.
of people that really
Yeah.
love loom. I
Yeah.
love loom too,
Yes.
but there really some people are really crazy about
Yeah.
loom, and
But to me,
I
loom
understand
is
it. It's
still
a cool
is
feature.
magic. Like I just prefer. I prefer to think that has something to do with Gandalf rather than science. You know, it's just magic stuff.
I'm a Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
fan.
Um,
You did say Gandalf,
yes, I
right?
did. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Gandalf the
That's
Grey or
right.
Gandalf the White. Yeah.
I feel like we will get along pretty well. I'll have a lot of similar interests. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is almost an hour now, so I better. But
Yeah,
thank you so much for your time. Like, really interesting to get these sorts of feedbacks from you and just hear
yeah,
about how does it work on the owner's end. So
yeah.
really appreciate your
Thanks a lot
time.
for the invite,
Pleasure.
and yeah, hope people find it interesting, and yeah, again, thanks a lot for your time and appreciate it.
Pleasure.